Well, good morning. I've decided to put some the Greek videos I've been doing, New Testament Greek videos, on the YouTube channel, as well as on Facebook, to which I will post this later on. Because in some ways it's a better medium. And this is really mainly intended for the New Testament Greek group, which I have the pleasure of teaching on a Wednesday lunchtime. And I was going to say it's the beginners group, but they are no longer beginners. They're doing very well and certainly could no longer be classified as beginners. But because we're getting into, with the depths of Duff's New Testament Greek grammar now, I thought it would be a good idea to do a video and go through chapter 8, which is where we have reached. So chapter 8 of Duff begins on page 91, runs through to page 99, and I'm going to take you through bits and pieces of it. So it begins with these things called deponent verbs. Now, there are two things I want to say at this point. One is that I don't quite know why call them deponent verbs, I call them AI verbs. It introduces a whole new family of Greek verbs. Because so far you've done luo, luais, luai, luomen, lueta, luusin, and all the imperatives, the infinitives, the indicatives, and the aorist and the imperfect. And so far, so good. That's the omega and the epsilon omega verbs. And now we come to a completely different group of verbs called which Duff and others call deponent verbs. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but essentially for our purposes, it is AI verbs. So you'll see there, John 21, verse 13, Ektai, Jesus, Kai, Lambane, Ton, Arton. Jesus comes and takes the bread. They're both third person present verbs, indicative, but they have very different endings, and that's because erketai comes from erchomai, which is a very, very common Greek verb, with all sorts of cognates, which you'll find in the vocabulary of chapter 8, meaning I come, I go. It's fairly flexible. So when it says Jesus comes and takes bread, we would probably not translate it that way. We would probably even leave out erchomai altogether and say Jesus took bread. Or Jesus takes bread, and that's another one of these historic perfects, historic presents, rather. Don't worry about perfects. We'll get to that in due course. There is a note there that there are another group of verbs which are being left to chapter 19, which is a mercy, called the MI verbs, the me verbs. Mu iota ending verbs, things like apolumi, istemi, which is I destroy, I stand. The good news about the MI verbs is, well, the bad news is they're weird. The good news is there aren't many of them. And to be absolutely honest with you, particularly with the mu iota verbs, I've never learned the declensions of them. I simply recognise the verb form because there are so few of them. It's easier to learn the words. And that really leads me into the next thing to say. If you look at the chart 8.1.1, the indicative of ruamai, I rescue, you will probably at this point be pulling your hair out thinking, help. I'm having enough difficulty just getting my head around all the different forms of luo and filio that I've learned. Please don't throw something else at me. Now, this is a worthwhile point to say. With the New Testament Greek group I teach, we are going at this point to start using the Greek New Testament. And there's an important reason for that. And that is that you can only cram so much into your memory. Now, you might have a really extraordinary memory, just putting my iPhone into charge when I think about it. You might have the most extraordinary memory that is capable of holding endless forms of verbs and noun conjugations in your head, noun declensions, I should say, in your head, and memorizing endless amounts of these and endless amounts of vocabulary. If you're like me, and I think like most people, there is only so much of that kind of thing that you can put into your head. And it's a little bit like learning any other language. I like to think I speak a little French. The French would probably disagree. But the way I've learned to speak the French that I do know has been that, well, some of it has been by learning forms, but most of it has been by going to France and conversing with people who have been very generous and kind about my awful French and helped me through. Incidentally, French people are great like that. If you go and shout at them in English, they will pretend they don't understand. If you try to speak their language, they will more than meet you halfway and help you through your pronunciation and all the rest of it. And that's a by the by. So when we come to this chart, going back to page 91 and the endings of Ruamai, you probably think, help. There's the present, there's the future, there's the imperfect, there's the aorist, which are the ones that you've learned so far. So far, we've not even done the passive voice, which is a whole new ball game altogether. And you're probably looking at those and thinking, well, those are just the actives. And I can't learn. I just can't fit this in my head. So what I would say to you at this point is get the stuff that's important. Now, I would say in terms of AI verbs, I would say try to get the present tense in your head. So ruamai, ruai, ruetai, ruomatha, ruesthri, ruontai. I'll go through that again more slowly. Ruamai, ruai, ruetai, ruomatha, ruesthi, ruontai. If you can get that in your head, you'll do well. If you can manage the aorist, so much the better. But you'll notice with the imperfect and the aorist that just like the O and EO verbs, they have an epsilon prefix, and the aorist has a sigma stuck in the middle. So that's very much in keeping with what you've already learnt. And the future is, of course, very easy because you just stick a sigma in. So it isn't as difficult as it looks. But if you can, you'll do really well, even if you only learn the present tense, the present indicative of ruamai, the AI verbs, you will do well. So over the page, really, the things that I've already been saying, you have there the imperative, the infinitive, and the participle. And I would say to you, if you can, these are not in my memory. So if you can learn all these, you're doing better than I can do. For this sort of thing, when I'm reading the Greek New Testament, I really depend for things I don't know like this on Baxter. So if you can learn those, that's great. And if you can't, don't worry. What you will find is that as you start reading the Greek New Testament, you learn words. So, for instance, if people are learning English, they are not going to learn how to conjugate the verb to be. I am, you are, he is, she is. They will simply learn the words and learn to use the correct word. It's like that in Greek. The important words that you need to know, you will learn one by one. So don't worry too much about trying to memorize all of these different tenses and all of the different moods, because, as I said, you haven't even touched the passives, the passive voice yet. So do read that and take on board what it says. Going over the page, the important thing here probably is 813 on page 93, and that is that these deponent verbs, AI verbs, are very often intransitive verbs. In other words, they can't have objects. For instance, I come, I go, and that is, in some ways, it's helpful. In some ways, it's not. I would say, don't worry too much about what it says there. It is worth remembering, though, that there are a fair number of these deponent verbs are intransitive. Little exercise there for you on practice 813 on page 93, asking you to put those verbs in the tense and the person that's indicated. You might want to pause the video and do that. That's probably a useful exercise just to get you. Excuse me, I don't have coronavirus, I don't think. Just get you used to using the AI verbs. Now, under 814, it says grammatically the deponent verbs are said to be in the middle voice and normal verbs in the active voice. I'd say for now, don't worry about that. We will, if we get as far as doing this in chapter 15, we will do it in chapter 15. So there's a halfway practice. You can, if you keep the forms on pages 91 and 92 in front of you, you should be able to work through the halfway practice, and that'll be a useful thing to do. It will also introduce you to the vocabulary at the end of chapter 8. So I'd say do the halfway practice if you can. It'll just help you to get into AI verbs and learn a bit of vocabulary. Now, under 8.2 on page 94, the next thing is the imperfect future and other moods of Amy. Now, this is a little bit like what I was saying before. You can, if you want, learn all of this and try to add it to your stock of knowledge. Or you can say, I don't have brain space for this. The important, when you come to use the Greek New Testament and what's worth learning, because obviously the verb to be is used incredibly frequently, just as we use it in English. You will find in a great deal in the present tense and the imperfect. I would say don't worry too much about the future, and also if you want to, if you can learn learn the forms, do so. But actually, when you come to use the Greek New Testament, you will come across the verb to be so often that you will just get used to it and you'll recognize it. But if you can learn Amy, AI, I pronounce that Estin, Esmin Esti on Isin. The present tense is used a lot. The imperfect also, which actually isn't that difficult to learn. Amen, ace, ain, ate, amen, ate, asan. There's a variation, amen or ametha. I would say learn the present tense if you can. Then you'll recognise it when you come across it. I think Wenham actually has estin as a separate thing to learn, so you can use the third person present of to be before he teaches the verb to be, and maybe Duff does as well. I kind of forget. It is worth learning the present tense, but to be honest, when you start using the Greek New Testament, most of this will fit in. You've got the infinitive there, and the participle is worth knowing, but actually it isn't difficult, because if you look at the masculine nominative participle, you will see that it simply is the ending of the ones you've already learnt. So the singular is own and the plural is ontes, which you'll remember, luon, the participle of luo, singular, that's third person singular, and luontes, third person plural. So that actually makes your life quite easy. I think that's enough. It perhaps worth saying that in terms of the imperfect of Amy, if you come across a verb that looks like it's Amy and it has an eta at the beginning, it's likely to be an imperfect. Trust that makes sense. If not, you can always rewind the video and go over it again. I won't go any further than that. Do the practice on 8.2 if you have time. Worth doing it. Worth taking your time over this, because it really is worth getting familiar with the words, with the forms of Amy. 8.3, nouns of confusing gender. Wenham introduces this earlier on, actually, because there are a lot of masculine verbs, and you're going to love me for saying this, so I'm really going to endear myself to you, because so far, masculine nouns, you think all the masculine nouns end in os in the nominative singular. If only it was so. There's a whole bunch of them that end in what looks like a feminine genitive singular ending. So you have there prophetes and Judas. I wouldn't worry too much about the alpha sigma nouns at the minute. There are a number of nouns that end in eta sigma. Prophetes and mathetes, disciple, being two of them. And just see where you've got mathetes there in John, just under 8.3, John 20 verse 3, ho petros kai ho alos mathetes. You remember this is where Peter and John run to the tomb. Alos, other. Mathetes is disciple. And you've got a nice imperfect, a conto of Urkamite as well. So you'll see the declension there. Why does this matter? Well, you'll see that it declines. Prophetes declines in general in a very similar way, in some respects, to the feminine nouns ending in eta. except the nominative is ace, but you see the accusative is ain and the dative is ain with an iota subscript. The genitive, however, throws you a real curveball and goes to a masculine genitive. Now, this could cause you to pull your hair out. Over the page, you have the plural forms, which are really looks to me like they're identical to the female forms of RK and so on. Two things help you in this regard when you come to use the Greek New Testament. One is that there aren't all that many of them, and so you get to know them. I'm just trying to think what others there are in the vocabulary. Doesn't give many. So there aren't that many of them, and you get to recognise them. So prophetes, mathetes, and forgive me, there are others that just escape me at the minute. Under notes on page 96, the nouns are unusual for not having vocatives identical to their nominatives. The vocatives are propheta and Judah. Again, don't worry too much, because I don't know anywhere in the New Testament where the vocative of prophet or mathetes is used. It may be, but it'd be pretty unusual. And so I'd say don't worry too much about these. Just recognise, if you can, that there are masculine nouns that end in ace in the nominative, and look in their declension a little bit like feminine nouns ending in eta. And then, just when you think it's safe to get back in the water, under 832, there are feminine nouns identical to logos. Now, these are feminine nouns. Oh, that reminds me of something else we'll say to you in just a minute. These are feminine nouns that decline exactly like logos, but they're feminine. Why? Lost in the mists of the evolution of the Greek language. I've no idea, but there are. And two of those, well, you've got three there, including Aegyptus, Egypt. Hodos, Eremos, way and wilderness. Obviously, Hodos is a pretty common word. Eremos is scattered here and there, so that's worth learning. They decline exactly like logos, but they're feminine. The one that isn't there, and I don't know why it isn't, because I'm sure Wenham introduces it when he does this, is Parthenos, virgin. Now, what will help you with both the mathetes form and the Hodos and Eremos and Parthenos form is that very often they have the article. And so you'll get homathetes. And so, you'll sort of do a double take and say that looks feminine, but it's got a masculine article. And hopefully that'll trigger in your mind and memory, oh yeah, this is one of those eta sigma verbs that are masculine, but look like they're feminine. And likewise, when you come across hodos, you will often find it with the article hodos, and eremos, and so on. And this is why actually learning the article is really good, because it can often get you out of a tight spot. Yeah, not much else to say. Yeah, I'm not going to bother with most of this now. Do the translation on 8.3. It's straightforward to do the Greek to English. Yeah, that's another one there, Stratiote, soldier, which is an Eta Sigma noun as well. That's in practice 8.3. So now the vocabulary looks daunting. 19 deponent verbs, but actually a whole load of them are variations of ergamai. So ergamai, I come or I go. It's a pretty flexible verb, to be honest. Ap ergamai, I depart or go away. From apo, from, and so on. Di ergamai, I cross over. Again, using the preposition die. I circumai, into, I enter. Ex circumai, I go out. Ex, out, circumai. Para circumai, para, beside, I go by, pass by. You probably feel like passing by this entire chapter by now. It's not nearly as bad as I've probably made it sound. Pros circumai, pros, towards, I come to, I approach. Sun circumai, I come together. And hopefully you're coming together. Hopefully this is coming together. Sun with circumai come together, as opposed to fall apart. So few others there that are worth learning. Aptomai is I touch. Arneomai. If you can, I just try to think of a mnemonic for this, but if you can picture some way of Arnold Schwarzenegger, Arnie refusing or denying something, that might help you. Archimai is an important verb. You'll see there's 86 uses of it. Archimai, I begin. That's very much worth learning. Decamai, this one escaped me when I came to this chapter. Decamai, I receive. Again, quite common. Gatsamai is easy to learn because it's from ergon. Remember, ergon, work. So ergatsamai. And you'll find a number of these are based on nouns that you've already learnt or will learn. So ergatsamai, you should be able to remember that because it begins with erg, work. Ergon, you've already learnt ergatsamai. Euangelitsamai, easy, isn't it? Euangelion, gospel, good news. I proclaim the good news. Logitsamai. Think of it in terms of logic. Logos means not just word; it can also mean thing. It's a broad word which has to do with the mind. Logitsamai is I calculate, I consider. Prosukamai is obviously an important word in the New Testament. I pray. A lot of praying goes on in the New Testament, which is a jolly good thing. Proskaliamai, you can think of pros, to, kaliamai, kalo, call. Proskaliamai, I summon. Ruamai, I didn't know this. It's only 17 times I rescue. If you remember it, great. If you can't, don't worry. Oh, here's the masculine nouns that are like mathetes. So we've got Herodes, Herod. Nice chap. Ioannes, Johnson. A lot of these are common names. Mathetes, prophetes, Stratiote, soldier. Hopeirete, servant. I actually didn't know that one. Servant, I understood mainly diakonos or doulos, or commonly slave. Hopeiretes, servant. I didn't know that, and I will probably forget it and need to use my Baxter. So just being honest about this. And then some proper nouns really like Judas, Barnabas, Judas, Satanas. Guess what they are, can't you? So that's simple enough. Elias, Elijah, and you might want to add to the feminine words declining like logos. You've got Aegyptos, Eremos, and Hodos. You might want to add Parthenos, which is the word for virgin. I have no idea why Duff hasn't included it here unless there is something that I don't know. There's a hint there about confusing of Archimai and Urkamai, since they look identical in the imperfect. Don't worry too much about it. It won't occur that often, and you'll get the hang of it. So there you go. Exercises A and B and C, and I've been going for half an hour. And you're perfectly capable, intelligent people, perfectly capable of doing the exercises. So I'm going to finish there and say I've really enjoyed making this video. I hope I haven't made your life miserable. I hope I've made it a little bit easier for you to do your New Testament Greek, and I look forward to getting into some of this with you in coming days. Bless you all. I'll be posting this on the not only on my own channel, but the next day or so I'll also post it on the Facebook New Testament Greek group. I'm going to go and make a coffee, talk to my beautiful wife who's just come back from doing the shopping, and hopefully has brought me some nice goodies. Bless you.